All right, so we're hitting the next last topic for this part 1 of circles, and today we are doing central angles and arc measures. First, we're going to talk about what a central angle is, what you need to know about them, all that good stuff. So over to the right, I've drawn a circle, and the central angle here is angle YXZ or angle ZXY. It's a central angle because it starts out in the center and it extends out to the edge of the circle. So that's why it's a central angle. It's right in the center. You need to know that the sum of all central angles is 360. So if I was to take all these angles here that make up the center, it would add to 360. That makes sense because they would make a circle, and a circle is 360 degrees. And we already talked about this, but for our diagram at the right, that angle YXZ, which forms this angle right here, is a central angle. So if I was to go and say that YXZ is 84 degrees, you would just write it as the angle or the measure of angle YXZ is equal to 84 degrees. It's really important because in a little bit we're going to do some examples and you're going to have to solve for different angles. So remember that all of the central angles together equal 360. So it's super important, that piece of information. We're still going to be looking at the same diagram to the right, that original circle, and then that angle that's marked as 84 degrees, but we're now going to talk about something called arc measures. So in general, what arc measure is the measure of the arc formed by the endpoints of a central angle. So I have my central angle here, which was YXZ, and the endpoints of this are Y and Z. So the arc that I'm looking at is the one between them. This is the arc we're referring to here. So you need to know that that arc measure is equal to the central angle. So here, our central angle is 84 degrees. The arc across from it, its arc is YZ. YZ is also 84 degrees. So we know that YZ, and remember to show that it's an arc, it has this curve above it, is equal to 84 degrees. Now from your vocab, I told you about two different arcs that we have. We have a major arc and a minor arc. This is a minor arc. If you aren't sure how to tell the difference, a minor arc is labeled with 2 letters, but a minor arc is also less than 180 degrees. So since 84 is less than 180, it is a minor arc. Now in this situation, we do have a major arc. If I was to put this letter A here, I could now say I have this arc ZAY. That's the big part. Let me use a different color. So ZAY. It's 3 letters, so I want to figure out what the measure of arc ZAY is. Now, just like central angles, we're looking at the number 360. So if I wanted to find that missing piece, I would take 360, and I'm going to subtract what I already have, which is 84. And 360 minus 84 leaves me with 276. So I know that arc ZAY is 276. And remember, we just talked about this. The other one was a minor arc, so ZAY is a major arc. I spelled that completely wrong. A major arc. It has 3 letters, but it's also greater than 180, which is how we know that it's a major arc. So we're actually going to get into some examples, but there are 3 things you need to remember. The first one deals with the semicircle. So you need to remember that a semicircle, which is half of a circle, is 180 degrees. You also need to recall, this is from last semester, that a right angle is 90 degrees. We use it with our special right triangles in trig as well. Remember, the right angle can either be written as 90 or it can have the little box, the little corner. And if you see that, you automatically need to know that it's 90 degrees. The third thing you need to know is that vertical angles are equal. Those are the angles across from each other. If you have 2 lines that create an X, you'll see some of these examples in a little bit, but these are 3 things that you just need to recall that we've already learned. Alright, so this is the first example we're going to do. I would make sure that you draw it to the best of your ability. Whenever you see a problem like this on a quiz, on a test, anything, I would automatically just start labeling what I know. So if you look here, we have our circle and we have our center at Q, and we have this line right here that runs straight across. What that does is it cuts our circle in half we now officially have a semicircle. So I know these two angles together should equal 180. So I need to figure out how I'm going to find this first angle, which is SQR. So it's right here. So I'm going to just draw it to the side. And I just told you that I want to find that, and I have a half circle. So I know I'm going to take 180. I'm going to subtract 122 from it. And when I do that, I end up with 58 degrees. So I now know this right here is 58 degrees. Some of the things that I would ask you to find in this problem, so let me draw it out to the side. I want to know the measure of angle SQR, and we just found that. We found it to be 58 degrees. I want you to find the measure of arc ST, and then I want you to find the measure of arc SRT. So now we're going to move on to the second part, the measure of ST. So remember, that's this arc right here. And we talked about central angles and their arc measures. This is just the one we're given. If you're given an angle, you know that its arc measure, if you're given a central angle, sorry, you know that its arc measure is the same. So because the angle is 122, the arc right here is also 122. So I know the measure of arc ST is 122 degrees. I need to find now the measure of arc SRT. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight in a different color, SRT. Now I know I need to find this small arc of SR first, but I already found its central angle. So I just draw my arrow out, and I know that this is 58 degrees. Now the tricky part here is what you have to remember. I need to find this arc now from R to T. This is a half circle, a semicircle, and remember that angle measure is equal to 180. I told you about that. So I draw my arrow across. I know that this arc is also 180. Now to find from S to R to T, I'm going to take these two numbers, so 58 and 180. I'm going to add them together. 58 plus 180 is equal to 238. So I know that SRT is 238 degrees as well. This is something that just takes a lot of practice. Some of you are going to get it right off the bat. Others, it will be a little bit more struggle, but make sure you're drawing all over your diagrams and writing what you know. So here's example 2. I'm asking you to find the measure of angle UXV, the measure of arc ST, the measure of arc WV, the measure of arc TW, and then finally the measure of arc TVW. So before I even start finding any of that or figuring out what I'm looking for, I'm going to just label my circle. So I have 87 degrees right here, and that's the only angle I'm given technically. But remember, we have this arc 72, and its central angle across from it, which would be right here, is equal to it. So I'm going to label that with a 72. I look now, and I do have this half circle. So I know if I take these three angles and add them together, they should equal 180. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to take 72 plus 87. Now when I do that, use your calculator please, and you end up with 159. Now to find that missing angle, that middle angle, I'm going to take 180 and I'm going to subtract 159 from it. And when you do that, you should end up with 21. So that's what goes right here in the middle. So that was dealing with the semicircle where it's equal to 180. I now have a situation where I have vertical angles. So if you don't remember what vertical angles are, we take two lines. So we have one here, which is a chord SV. We have another chord WU. When they intersect, those angles across from each other, so this one right here and this one right here, they're equal to each other. So I now know this angle is 72 degrees as well. I have another situation. I'm going to draw my line. I have a half circle here. So these two angles together equal 180. So to find this missing angle where that X is, I'm going to do 180 minus 72. When I do that, it leaves me with 108. So I know now that this angle here is 108. I've found all my central angles, which also means that I found all of my arc measures. I'm going to label those as well. And just remember, they match each other. So this would be 21. Right here would be 87. This would be 72. And finally, this one would be 108. I can now start looking at my questions and figuring out what I need to find. So this first one, I asked you for the measure of UXV. So I have UXV. It's this angle right here. I've already found it, and I know it's equal to 72 degrees. The next one is the measure of arc ST. So from S to T, I want to know what this arc measure is. I've already found it. I know it's 21 degrees. The third one I ask you for is the measure of arc WV. So that is WV, and we go in order of the letters. I found that as well, and I know it's 108 degrees. My fourth question is the measure of arc TW. So that's from T to W. Now this is not just one measurement. I have two. I have 21 and I have 72. So all you're going to do is add those together. So 21 plus 72 ends up giving me 93 as my arc measure. And the last question on this example I ask you for is TVW. So I have from T to V to W. And that deals with three different numbers. So I have 87, 72, and 108. Just like the last one, we're going to add all those together. 87 plus 72 plus 108. And when I add those all together, I end up with 267 as my answer. So this is one of those questions where you would have to do all the steps. I do encourage you to find the central angles or the arc measures first. Usually central angles is easier. And then you'll label your arc measures, and then you just start adding. You look at what you need, add the parts together if you need to, and just go from there. All right, so example 3 we have here. And just like the last one, I'm going to go and I'm going to start solving for my central angles. I see here I have this 34 as an arc measure, so if I draw my arrow across, it points to the angle that goes with it. So I know that this angle right here is also 34. Now, I told you in the things to remember, I told you about right angles, and this is what I was talking about. You may see this little box. You need to know that it automatically means 90 degrees. Now, looking at the rest of this, I have a straight line right here. I have a semicircle. So together they should equal 180. 180 minus 90 gives me this other side, which also happens to be 90. So I know this angle is also 90 degrees. I have the same situation over here. I have a half circle. One of the angles is 90, so that automatically means that the other angle is also 90 degrees. Now I'm almost done. Again, you have this half circle or semicircle on the bottom. So if I take all three angles, 1, 2, and 3, and added them together, they should equal 180. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the two angles that I have, 90, and I'm going to add it to the second one, 34. When I do that, I end up with 124. And now in order to find that missing angle, I'm going to subtract it from 180. And when I do that, I end up with 56. So 180 minus 124 gave me that 56. So I have all of my central angles. I now have all of my arc measures. I'm going to draw the arrows across so I know which arc it goes with. And I can just start labeling. I have this one right here, CD. And I know that its measure is 90 degrees because it matches its central angle. So I'm just going to go around the circle. I know this one is also 90, matches its angle. We already had the 34 one. GF or FG is 56. Again, it matches its central angle. And the last part is 90 degrees. So I have all my central angles labeled. I have all my arc measures labeled. I can now do the questions to the right. The first thing I needed to find was the measure of CD, which is this arc right here. It's already labeled for me, and I know that it is 90 degrees. Now the second one I'm asking you for is FD, which is from here to here. This deals with two of the minor arcs we already solved for. So remember, we're going to take both of them and add them together. I'm going to do 90 plus 34. and that ends up giving me 124 for this arc measure. Now the third one I ask you for is DCF. So I'm going to outline that so you know what we're talking about, from D to C all the way to F. This actually deals with 3 of them. So we have 90, 90, and 56. So I'm going to take all those and add them together. 90 plus 90 plus 56. When I add them all together, it leaves me with 236 as my arc measure. And then the final question on this one, we're looking for the measure of arc GDF. So I start at G, I go to D, so G to D to F. There's 2 ways to do this. Since this only excludes one arc measure, you could actually do 360 minus that 156, or you can do what we've been doing and taking each piece and adding it together. When I do that, I would have 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 34. So either of these would give you the same answer, and when you do that work, it gives you 304 as your answer. So like I said, there's going to be some practice problems where you're doing exactly this. I'm giving you a bunch of these circles and I'm asking you for different things. If you are able to print the worksheet off, I would. If not, just make sure you draw it and label what I give you. Make sure you include all those letters and everything like that. This is difficult if you don't practice it. And like I said, this is the next to last thing you need for your test, which will be next week.